Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Hello and welcome back to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge. Today we're joined by Ben Heuertz, co-founder of the Skinny platform. Launched in 2023 with his father Dan, Ben created a fresh approach to publishing by turning interviews into skinny books, short, sharp, and read in under 60 minutes that get entrepreneurs' real voices out without ghostwriter dilution. These short books act as strategic marketing assets, establishing thought leadership, amplifying your voice, and fueling promotion through audio, video, and social clips. Ben, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Reed.
my pleasure. We got acquainted recently, and I thought the business you're doing is so cool, and I think a lot of businesses could really benefit from what you do, and wanted to help broadcast your message. So Ben, tell us a little bit about what life or career experience led you to start the Skinny platform, and was there a single experience that helped you think that we need to get a better way for entrepreneurs to publish their work?
Yeah, so this is whenever I get this kind of question, I always laugh a little inside because if you look at my experience and my background, it's like I was barely passing high school English classes, so ghostwriting I did not think would be in my future. But what happened was I actually started a different business where I was in the tech space, and I was going through that, and then COVID hit, and with everything that happened, ultimately the business didn't work out, and I ended up moving back home with my parents. And this is when I started seeing issues around ghostwriting and publishing because my dad had been talking about writing a book for as long as I can remember, 10 or 15 years. And when I moved back home was around the time that he really committed to figuring it out and doing it. He had hired a ghostwriter, was going through that whole process, but ultimately still wasn't satisfied, still wasn't kind of moving it along to where it should be. And coming home, I had some new time on my hand. I had some free time. And frankly, I was a little annoyed with him constantly talking about it. So I was just like, hey, let me take a shot at this. And I think coming at it with that fresh perspective of not knowing anything and not having experience with it allowed us to really create something unique and different because we didn't know what there was out there. So we didn't recreate anything. We didn't follow any other guidelines. We just really looked at it from, okay, this is where we are. This is where we're trying to get there. What's the path of least resistance to do that? And that kind of created this opportunity with Skinny Books.
That's awesome. And I love that you started with a problem that needed to be solved, one that even kind of tangentially you were experiencing personally, just your father just talking about it all the time. And so tell me a little bit about, so there's one interesting aspect of the Skinny platform, the 60-minute read time format. How did you land on 60 minutes as like an ideal time for a book to be consumed? And what kinds of results have you seen, or what kind of observations have you had as you've done this?
Yeah, this I think is what really where we can provide values to the readers. We do a ton of stuff to provide value to authors, but on the reader side, this is really our value proposition. And we've updated our language a little bit to move away from an exact time frame to more a book that can be read in one sitting. That was kind of the original idea behind the 60 minutes, but now we clarify that more with a book that can be read in one sitting. And the whole idea is content and how people consume content has changed so much. It keeps getting shorter, more condensed, more bite size. But if you look at books, especially business books, they've stayed the same for the past 100 years or whatever, 200 years. And we really wanted to match the trends and evolution with how people consume content. And we did that through designing the book so that way you can pick it up, read it all without having to put it down and come back to. Because we all have a stack of books that we started, got 20 pages in, put down, and then never went back to. It happens to everyone. But that was kind of our thinking. And then recently, listening to a Dan Sullivan podcast, he writes shorter books also. He mentioned a stat from Borders, the former bookstore, where a book with 200 pages of the people that buy it, so people invested money to get this book, about 2% will read the entire thing. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. And then if you bring that down to, I forget if it's either 60 or 80 pages, the amount of people that will finish it goes all the way up to 80. So if you want to write a book that people actually read, it has to be in the skinny book format, and the data's there to prove it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm a pretty avid reader, and yeah, I think I could confirm that just anecdotally, that there are a lot of books that I start and then they're due back at the library, or they're doomed to my pile here. I'm just looking at it as we talk. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like some of the business effects of this. Have you had any experiences with these customers where they report back on how this is effective as a tool? And I know you do some effort to make this a multi-channel marketing tool. Talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I think my favorite example is with a book that's not even out yet. So with this person, we started doing kind of the prep work and the interview that creates the content of the book. And in that process, just through us asking questions, forcing him to say, okay, this is how I'm going to say it moving forward, to kind of solidify everything, that forced him to really reflect on his business. And he's been running this IT company for 30 plus years. And by going through our process, after we did the interview, we didn't hear from him for 2 months, and we're like, what the heck is going on? Like, we thought we were doing great. And then he pops back up and he goes, yeah, after going through that, I repositioned my whole business. By going through the process, he identified opportunities and where he wants to bring this business. Just by that, being forced to refine it and then stick to a position and not constantly change over time, because it's going into a book. In the book, it's going to stay the same. So if you go and say it different every time, people are going to notice.
Interesting. Now, so let's talk a little bit about that process. How is a book constructed? Now, I would guess that, as you described, as somebody that didn't enjoy high school English, that you've made it pretty user friendly for non-writers. How do you start, and how does that end up in a published book?
Yeah, so our entire process is conversational. If you are a writer and want to get in there, get your hands dirty, great. That makes it even easier for us, honestly. But we've built our entire process to create the book through a series of conversations. So that starts at the beginning, where my partners, either Catherine or Ben, who do the interviewing, work with the entrepreneurs to, like I mentioned, refine that message. We call them story mapping sessions. So you're creating the story, the journey you want the reader to go on, not just through the content of A to B to C, but what's the emotional journey that you want to bring them along. All that happens early on in the prep work, and then that leads to a sit-down interview. And they had all this practice in the prep, so now they can say it in a clear, organized way in this sit-down interview. And then from there, what we do is we take the transcript from that interview and turn that into a book. So I like to say we don't ever do any writing. We're just editors.
Okay.
Yep. And that differs from other ghostwriters because they'll do the interview, they'll get the concepts, get the ideas, but then they end up writing it in their own words. By us using the transcript, we're literally using the entrepreneur's words to write the book. So that way, when they do go out and talk to a lead or talk at a conference, whatever it is, it's going to match up word for word what's in the book because we're carrying their authentic voice throughout it.
That's really cool. Now, what kinds of businesses and entrepreneurs and professionals do you work with? And maybe who, just for some guidance, who would be a best fit for this kind of product?
Yeah, so our largest segment is definitely
Okay.
coaches. And that's not been just like a coach in one category. We've had sales coaches helping people build sales teams. We're working with a coach right now who's more about mindset. So, really, within that coaching segment, there's a large range of topics, but that is the largest individual that comes to us. But that's probably about half of our business right now. And then the other half is kind of a large array of things. We're working with companies to write books on their core values and culture. We've worked with doctors. We're working with a therapist to write about like family dynamics and the inner critic. So we've really worked on a lot of different topics. Our latest book that went out was angel
Hmm.
investing. So yeah, we've been in terms of the topics, it's across the board, but what we're focused on is the coaches and the entrepreneurs as the authors.
Okay. And I remember a few years ago, my wife, who ran her own business, she was getting into coaching, and I think she really could have benefited from this. She was like a practitioner, and I could totally see the book as being a great like launch vehicle. To make your debut into coaching. Even if you are brand new to the field. So I think there's a lot of potential there. Um, do you find that people are they using these books? Are they selling these books? Are they giving them away? What has generally been the approach? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because like give it
Yep.
away as a promotional gift, or are they actually getting revenue from selling these?
Yeah. So uh, up front with our authors, we say if you're writing a book to make the book profitable and make money off the book, we're probably not the right people for you. We're very honest about that. Where we provide the most value, like I mentioned, is in getting your message down, getting your message solidified and refined, and then communicating that message. And that doesn't mean that we're not trying to sell books. We've recently partnered with a book printer to expand distribution into Barnes and Nobles, Target, Walmart, all those stores and everything. Uh, but our main goal is on the writing side. That's our focus. And in terms of the use case of the books, we see a lot of lead qualification is kind of the biggest use case. So not exactly lead gen, but more the qualification piece of someone comes in, says, "Hey, I'm interested." They're able to hand them a book, and rather than going through 3, 4, 5 calls to see if they want to move forward, well, because they have the book, they've gotten insight into the process and into that person. Now it's 1 or 2 calls. We had one person who cut their kind of uh, the time it takes to close a sale from about 3 months down to less than 30 days using the book. That's been by far the largest use case, especially for coaches. But then we also see similar use cases through like the culture book I mentioned, where they're a big, they do a lot of
Hmm.
M&A. And so they'll hand the book to M&A targets and be like, hey, this is what we're about. Here's our history. Here's our culture. Is this something you're interested in joining? So it's been interesting to see that going into this, I 100% would have thought that was for lead gen and to get kind of organic leads through the door. But that has not been the case. It's more so on that qualification side.
That's really interesting. And I like these creative these anecdotes. Was it a coach that you mentioned earlier that was using this to shorten the sales cycle? Is that the
Yep.
case? Awesome. Yeah, that I could totally see that because a lot of sales processes include some back and forth and like, well, learn about my company and then I'll learn about yours. And,
Yep.
but if you have a book, it's on paper, it's like, and it does indicate a level of like serious interest. Like if you're going to read somebody's book. So
Exactly. Yep.
now, did you know much about the publishing industry or marketing? I mean, marketing, yes, you've been in business before, but the publishing industry, were you very familiar with this going into this venture?
Yeah, not at all. Just been kind of building the airplane as we fly it on that side of things. And that's been interesting to see because, like I mentioned, not knowing these things going into it was a real strength for
Hmm.
us. But now it's been kind of fun for me, at least, to see working backwards from what we built to now. Oh, we have 6 books out. Let's start learning about what traditional publishing is looking like so we can see how our process differs and where we can optimize and everything. And we're really just kind of starting to get into that. Like I mentioned, we partnered with a book printer. We're just starting to do PR for our books. So really, this publishing space is kind of the next frontier of opportunity we see to really get better at. We've gotten really good at the writing process part, which is what we pretty much were solely focused on at the start. And now that we've built out our processes, we've proven them out, made them repeatable, we've started hiring writers. Well, now going to the next phase, which is publishing and getting that book into people's hands.
Um, so how did you find writers? So I guess I've got a follow-up question to that, but how did you find writers that were, a good fit for your team? Um, and what characteristics do you look for in these writers?
Yeah, so we actually, t- for the most part, look at journalists rather than traditional like book writers. Just because with the skinny book, we're trying to get the point across and communicated clear and condensed, whereas typical book writers like to add a lot of detail and adjectives and kind of build out the book. So that's one thing that we do differently. But then just in terms of the people, at this point, we're small enough where it's all been people that refer to us, either friends, family. One of the writers we're working with now is a partner of mine's old babysitter.
Oh,
So it's been a lot of close connections, friends, and everything. But that's also, I think, great for building the culture of the business because they know what we're like going into it. We know what they're like going into it. And it really simplifies things because you don't have to evaluate kind of the culture fit piece of things because we know them.
so networking is obviously a great tool, and you've been using it heavily. What tips would you give to an entrepreneur in regards to networking? Like, how do you do it well? How do you get started? How do you, turn acquaintances or others into uh, leads, partners, employees? How,
Yep.
how do you do that?
Yeah, I think, well, biggest thing for me, which might not be the case for a lot of entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs tend to be an outgoing bunch. But the biggest thing for me was just the mindset of leaning into
Hmm.
it. Now, I'm a person where I have my group of people I'm close with, and I typically stay within that group. So networking and going to an event where I knew no one was kind of daunting task at the start. So leaning in and just making the best of the situations was a key piece to getting started. And then kind of improving my situation and getting better at it. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is just be curious. Like, people don't want to hear you talk about your business. People want to talk about themselves. So ask questions, ask about what they're up to, ask about their business, and really you can get a lot of insights into people and what they're looking for through those questions and how they talk about it. And then through that, you'll recognize opportunities to say, oh, here's a place where I can provide value. And that's kind of my second piece of advice, is coming from a help first mindset. There's been a lot of times, like, I'm helping someone right now publish a book for free. They already wrote the whole thing. I'm just helping them out because they asked for help. Like, if you can help someone out, I think that's the best way to kind of go about networking, because then they'll remember you. And if they have a friend that's looking for writing a book, they might refer them. So be curious, and going with a help first mindset is kind of my two key components of my networking approach.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think I share with you I do have a tight circle of friends, and it does take some effort to break out of that. But I have seen some real payoff in doing that. And your advice about curiosity and offers to help, I think, are it's like you can't always like see tangible returns on that, but it does benefit you. Like it does come around. Sometimes it's in the long term, and
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have not seen the dividends from it yet, but I've no doubt that building up karma in the bank
yeah,
is never a bad thing.
yeah, absolutely. Now, you've been doing this for a while, and now do you see for the future of the Skinny platform, do you want to just focus on growth and where, in your lane, what you're doing, or do you plan or want to expand to different formats or different services? Have you thought that far?
Yeah, so that was one thing we were kind of doing from the start. We're like, okay, we're doing this, let's get really good at it, but also keep our eyes open for the next opportunity. And I think that's been a shift in our thinking over the last month or so, where it's really become, we're really good at this book writing thing. Let's optimize it now. Let's get really good, and let's just be 100% heads down focused on book writing. So there was a time where we were looking at doing people's podcasts. We were looking at possible membership models for readers. Like, we were thinking about all these different things, and I'm not saying that they're completely off the table, but for the time being, we're 100% dedicated to the ghostwriting and publishing
Yeah, that
service.
makes sense. Yeah, but I mean, if you've got a team of great writers, there's a million ways to use a great team like that.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about AI now. And every writer is and marketer and publisher is thinking about AI. Now, how has AI affected your business, and how might you expect it to affect it in the future? There's obviously tremendous value in what you do, but what are your thoughts on AI as a partner or as a disruptor? What do you think?
Yeah, so AI has been a huge help for
Oh,
us.
great, great.
Starting out, like, when we were getting going, it was just right around the time GPT-3 came out. So it was just kind of this first wave of consumer AI. And we wouldn't have started this business without it, because we wouldn't have had transcriptions of our, like, the interviews that we do. And that was kind of the first key component we needed to say, okay, this is something that we can do. And then for the first 3 or 4 books, I still would test out the AI every time, but we would hand edit those transcripts into the book format just because the AI was not good enough to do that yet. And then probably a little less than a year ago, it got to the point where the AI was good enough where it saved us time to do the rough drafts in using Claude. So then we started putting the transcripts through Claude, and that turned into the rough drafts of the book. And I mean, just at that point, we went from spending about 30 hours to do a rough draft. Now it takes 4 to 6 hours.
Wow.
So that amount of time that AI is saving us, it keeps growing. And like we still use like the grammar check tools and AI and everything. But still, after that rough draft, it is handed off to a human editor and writer. So that's where kind of the editing process is able to be conversational. Because with an entrepreneur, they're busy. Yes, you could talk to an AI and have it edit the transcript uh, or edit the rough draft, but then the entrepreneur has to go through, check it all, make sure it all works. So it still is not good enough at that point where it surpasses a human writer, especially in terms of saving the entrepreneur time.
That's awesome. I love to hear that kind of success because you've combined, still human touch and expertise with massive savings on there's effort in interviewing, like asking good questions that give compelling answers, and there's effort in the final polish. Like it's not. This isn't. AI isn't really capable of generating masterpieces yet. And
Oh yeah, and the interviewing
yeah,
piece is extremely
yeah,
human still, and I don't see that aspect of it being replaced. And then also, like you mentioned, the final polishing and proofreading, I don't see that being replaced as either. But like going to the interviewing piece, all that prep work that we do with an entrepreneur, sometimes they come in thinking they're going to write a book about one topic. Well, if they're with an AI, I'm sure you've
yeah.
seen it. AI is very encouraging.
Hmm.
So they'll end up writing about that topic if they did it with
Right.
AI. But with us and being forced to reflect and refine it, they get to topic B and then C, and then, oh, that's the topic that I really wanted to write about.
Yeah,
And you're not going to get that with AI.
absolutely. No, that's a great summation. Now, for I guess second to last question for entrepreneurs or business owners or thought leaders, coaches that are on the fence about writing a book, that like maybe it's something they haven't done yet, and they're like, oh, I don't know. What would you say is your elevator pitch, and why would this be valuable for them to do?
Yeah, so I think if someone's on the fence about it, they have to consider two things. One, are they doing it or are they stuck on it because they don't want to spend the time or they don't want to spend the money? If they don't want to spend the time, there's solutions out there. Like you can get it done. We're one of them, and there's other people as well. If they want a more traditional book or a different format, there's solutions out there that solve for the timepiece of it. Like on that front, over about the 90 days it takes to write a book with us, it's about a 20 to 25-hour time commitment from the author. So that timepiece can be done away with through processes and AI, like we mentioned. If it's the money piece, then it's about the model that comes next. So through our process, we generate a ton of content. So you can then use that content to pitch speaking engagements. You can use that content to pitch your services. So by working with a ghostwriter, working with a publisher, generating that content can then be monetized through additional routes, whether it's speaking engagements or promoting your service, which I think is the most underrated part of book publishing because people just look at the book. Well, now you have 100 pages of content and 4 hours of video. Think of everything else you can do with that. You can have clips, you can have podcast episodes. You have all this content that you can then use to promote yourself.
I love it. I love it. Well, Ben, where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about Skinny platform, or have any questions directly for you? Where would be the best place for them to get a hold of you?
Yep, it's still being built out, so I've been spending the last week or so building it, but it is up and live. writeskinny.com is the best place to find us. On there, you can schedule a meeting with me directly, or you can contact us through email, whichever way is preferred. Once again, writeskinny.com.
Awesome. Well, Ben, it has been a pleasure. I love this topic. I'm an avid reader, and I think you've sold me. I think I need to do this. So let's.
We would love to work with you.
I love it. So reach out to Ben, and hopefully we can keep in conversation and be in contact in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.